Being a RWBY fan has been a rough adventure for the past couple of years to say the least. Many debates and critiques on the direction of the show since the end of the third volume has led to places like Reddit and Tumblr becoming a battleground. And I love it. Something about seeing people argue about a show online would put a smile on my face if I had one. Even more so when the debates are civil and don't just drop down to which ship is the best. I personally do not give a fuck about Blake's web of potential love interests, but you can count me in if we get some good-ass character development. So as I said, the direction that the show is going in seems to spark controversy among fans. For me personally though, Volume 5 was a good step in the right direction, but also flawed as hell. I feel like this is the first RWBY volume where I actually felt something really significant for the characters. The cast has grown spectacularly, and the voice work has improved a tremendous bit to help me really get invested into these characters. Yang finding her own path and learning to stabilize her emotions. Blake finishing up the menagerie arc, placing trust in herself and becoming somewhat of a leader. Weiss finally being on her own and being a strong, independent Weiss woman. Get it? Cause like she's white in the trailers and she's white in the team and I disgust myself. Mostly every character I felt more emotionally invested in due to their performance this season. A feeling I haven't felt nearly enough of in RWBY, aside from scenes like Roman's speech, Pyra's death, and Yang's talk with Blake. The fight scenes have improved drastically as well. In Volume 4, the only fight that I thought was memorable or worth noting was Crow vs. Tyrion, where other fights like Ranger vs. the Nakalavi Grim were just not as impressive. In this volume, Weiss vs. the Queen Lancer, Blake vs. Ilya, Raven vs. Cinder, Volume 5 character shorts, and even Oscar vs. Ruby when they were training all felt like extremely well done scenes. Many of the issues I had with last volume felt like they were addressed entirely. Fight scenes more like Tyrion vs. Crow. Proper and not rushed development between characters, good interaction, goddamn emotions. Everything feels like it is built up tremendously from the last volume. Even side characters like the pilot on Weiss's ship and Sienna Khan left an amazing impression on me. And when it comes to development, I would have to say that Ilya, Blake, Yang, and Weiss had some of the best development in the series. As I said before, it felt like a lot of the issues I had in Volume 4 had been addressed, but other issues still stand. The pacing in this volume was horrible, with thousands of cliffhangers and spending an extraordinary amount of time on trivial moments. We got an explanation for what the fuck Salem is twice this volume, something which we have known since the beginning of Volume 4 as viewers, but the cast didn't know. And the explanation we were given isn't anything new, aside from her being this almighty evil, like we already knew when she was first teased. The most well-paced character in my opinion was Weiss. From her start until her end, I never once thought, okay, this is taking too long, get it over with. Contrary to that, Blake's menagerie arc felt like there were points that were not needed, or that dragged on for too long. A lot of menagerie had these ball-busting cliffhangers that ended with shitty results. What's going to happen to the Belladonnas? They're fine. It's not just menagerie either. Oh boy, Team Cinder vs. Raven incoming? Nah, just some flashy spring-mated mumbo-jumbo and a fucking peace treaty. By far the worst pacing in the series was Ranger, Oscar, and Crow in the Haven house. As I said, Weiss had the best pacing, but this was because she wasn't in every episode, and each point where she left off felt like a logical next step. With Ranger, we see them in the Haven guest house until the end of the fucking volume, where they move from the Haven guest house to the Haven fight room. As such, their characters suffered with very little noteworthy moments. I'm pretty sure the best scenes in that house was Ruby's reunion with Yang, Ruby's heart-to-heart with Oscar, and Weiss's scene with Yang. The rest felt like needless filler, or retread on what we already knew. By far though, the worst part of this volume was, ironically, the main character Ruby Rose. Remember when I said most characters had amazing character development this volume? The only character change I could find in RWBY this volume was her acquiring the TM headbutt, and her voice raising 25 Hz higher in pitch than Volume 4. For being the main character of the show, I fail to understand how RWBY can be this dull, my attention often pulling to other characters in the show. Even her small moment when she got angry, nothing changed. She just gave Mercury a headbutt. I'm hoping for better from her next volume, but I'm also not going to hold my breath, as this issue has been ongoing for quite a while in the series. Finally, one of the other biggest problems I had was half of the other fight scenes that were going on in the final few episodes. I feel like the production crew of RWBY didn't have a fucking clue on how to animate multiple fights going on at once. It feels like the rest of the world pauses while we view one pair fighting, and then picks back up with the other pairs when it switches. This made my attention slip away, and oftentimes I'd be analytical of the fights as a whole. This needs to get corrected, considering how the series will undoubtedly offer more fights than just this with multiple people. I mentioned earlier how their fights had improved, which is not wrong. Compared to Volume 4, these are loads better. However, it's the pacing of these fights that really suffers. If multiple people are fighting at once, then you have to take this into consideration, and not just have the spotlight shine on one person while others wait for their turn. Overall, yeah, I'd say it's a step up from the 4th volume, and I would say that Rooster Teeth is starting to head into the right direction. Of course, this is just my opinion, so they don't need to do a thing about any of these issues if they don't want to or feel it's necessary. But from the looks of a recent AMA on Reddit, they get the picture, and they are working on the issues that the community has. But who am I kidding? They could put out the next coming of Jesus himself, and the fanbase would still find something to complain about. Thanks for watching this video. All artwork and voice work was done by me. If you like this and want to see more, subscribe. If you're allergic to the subscribe button, press the like button instead. If you didn't like the video, is it because I left out your favorite ship? Sorry about that. Leave a comment or else I'm not going to know how to improve. See ya.